The day after Christmas, while the snow was still falling in thick, heavy sheets outside our townhouse in Maple Grove, Ben slid the separation papers across the kitchen table like he was passing the salt. No warning, no argument, no raised voice. Just a quiet, calculated movement of his hand. The radiator hummed. The tree lights were still on. Ethan's new Lego set was half-built on the coffee table. Sophie's doll stroller was tipped over near the couch. Domestic piece. Manufactured. "I think this is best," Ben said, folding his hands like he was chairing a board meeting instead of ending a marriage. "You can keep the house. I'll give you a clean payout. We'll make this easy." He paused. Then the part he clearly practiced. "I'll take the kids." Snow hit the window harder, as if the weather wanted a better view. He expected tears. I saw it in his face. That quiet anticipation. The slight tilt of his head. The patience of a man waiting for emotional collapse. Instead, I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. I didn't reread the first paragraph. I didn't ask a single question. I signed. Ben blinked. "Claire, you don't want to look it over?" "I trust you," I said softly. That was the first lie I'd told him in years. He leaned back, surprised, almost disappointed. He had prepared for resistance, for bargaining, for a scene. What he didn't know was that I had been waiting for this moment for 3 years. 3 years of late meetings. 3 years of muted phone calls in the garage. 3 years of that faint perfume that wasn't mine. 3 years of watching him slowly detach, while still using my life as his backdrop. The snowstorm outside wasn't sudden. It had been forecast all week. So had this. "You're taking this well," he said carefully. "I'm tired," I replied. That part was true. Tired of pretending I didn't see the distance. Tired of scheduling pediatrician appointments alone. Tired of hearing him say he was building our future while he barely looked at our present. He tapped the papers. "The payout is fair. More than fair. And I think it's best for Ethan and Sophie to have stability. I can provide that." There it was. The narrative. He would be the stable one. The provider. The calm parent. And I would be the overwhelmed mother who needs a break. He'd rehearsed this. "I appreciate that," I said. Outside, a snowplow scraped loudly down the street. Ben stood and poured himself coffee. He didn't offer me any. "I want this to stay peaceful," he added. "Especially through the holidays." I agree. Another lie. He didn't see it. He thought I was defeated. He thought offering me the townhouse was generous. He thought dangling a payout would make me grateful. He thought taking the kids was leverage. What he didn't know was that I had already memorized every bank statement for the last 18 months. That I knew about the Wisconsin consulting registration. That I knew about the ownership transfer filed under Tara Klein's brother's name. That I knew his clean exit wasn't clean at all. He thought he was presenting terms. In reality, he was triggering a timeline. "Thank you for not making this ugly," he said, almost relieved now. I folded my copy neatly. "I don't believe in ugly," I told him. The snow kept falling. The house felt smaller. Upstairs, Sophie laughed at something on her tablet. Ethan yelled for help with his Lego roof. Ben walked toward his office. "I have calls," he said. Of course he did. He always did. I remained at the table long after he shut the door. Not crying. Not panicking. Just breathing. The pen was still in my hand. He thought he had just ended something. What he actually did was start it. I signed because I needed him comfortable. I signed because confident men make mistakes. I signed because, once he believed I accepted his version of the story, he would relax. And when he relaxed, he would show everything. The snowstorm wasn't the beginning of my collapse. It was the cover for my preparation. He slid the papers across the table, expecting to watch me break. Instead, he handed me permission. And he didn't even know it. The next morning, nothing changed. That was the strangest part. The world didn't crack open. The sky didn't fall. I still woke up at 6:07 a.m. because Sophie crawled into my bed whispering that she was cold. Ben was already gone. "Early call," he texted. Of course. I made oatmeal. Packed lunches. Signed Ethan's permission slip for the Science Museum trip. Found Sophie's missing mitten in the dryer. The routine didn't pause for heartbreak. It never does. By 7:40, I was scraping ice off the windshield while the kids argued in the back seat about whose turn it was to pick the music. The snow from yesterday had hardened into gray ridges along the curb. Life looked normal. That's the thing about slow collapses. They're invisible to children. Are we doing movie night Friday? Ethan asked as I pulled into the school drop-off lane. Of course, I said. Ben and I had already decided there would be no visible changes until after the holidays. His rule. My opportunity. When I got back home, the townhouse felt staged. Like a house waiting to be shown. Clean counters. Fluffed couch pillows. The Christmas tree still glowing in the corner. Ben's office door was closed. I could hear his voice through it, smooth, confident, controlled. Yes, we'll finalize that next quarter. Send the revised projection. No, my partner is aligned. Partner. He said it so easily. Not wife. Not Claire. Partner. I loaded the dishwasher quietly. Started a crock-pot chili for dinner. Switched the laundry. This was my loop. School drop-offs. Grocery lists. Dentist appointments. Teacher emails. Laundry mountains that were generated overnight. And in between it all, silence. Ben emerged around noon for coffee. He didn't look at me. How are you feeling? He asked casually. Busy, I replied. He nodded like that confirmed something. I'll start talking to an attorney about custody logistics, he added. It'll be smoother if we frame it as you needing flexibility. There it was again. The narrative. I needed flexibility. Because I was overwhelmed. Because I was more emotional. Because he had structure. I stirred the chili slowly. You've always been better with systems, I said gently. He actually smiled. That small, satisfied smile. He believed I agreed with him. He believed I saw myself the way he needed me to. The kids came home at 3:15 in a wave of backpacks and noise. Sophie showed Ben a drawing of our family, for stick figures holding hands. Ben glanced at it for 2 seconds. That's great, Bug, he said, already checking his phone. Ethan tried to tell him about a math quiz. Buddy, can we talk later? I've got a call in 5. The office door closed again. The house shrank again. Dinner was at 6 o'clock. Ben ate quickly. I may need to travel in January, he mentioned casually. Investor meetings. I nodded. January. After the holidays. After the paperwork settled. After he positioned himself as the stable one. Ethan asked if Dad would come to his hockey practice Saturday. Ben hesitated just long enough. I'll try. He wouldn't. He rarely did. But in his version of events, he was the more present parent. I watched him clear his plate and disappear back into his office. The kids and I cleaned up. Baths. Pajamas. 2 bedtime stories. 1 glass of water. 1 nightmare reassurance. By 9:12 p.m., the house was quiet. Ben was still on calls. I sat at the kitchen table where he had slid the papers less than 24 hours earlier. My body was exhausted, but my mind was clear. He thought I was just a mom. Just routine. Just background noise to his ambition. He didn't see the way I tracked every deposit. Didn't notice the bookkeeping course bookmarked on my laptop. Didn't question why I'd switched our joint savings to a different credit union months ago for better interest. He believed I lived inside this loop. What he didn't understand was that repetition builds precision. And precision builds strategy. Upstairs, Sophie coughed softly in her sleep. Ethan rolled over. Ben laughed faintly behind his office door. A laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in years. The mom's schedule never ends. But neither does quiet observation. He thought I was surviving the days. In reality, I was counting them. I don't snoop anymore. I used to. 3 years ago, I checked phone bills. Scanned credit card statements like they were crime scenes. Stayed up too late analyzing tone shifts in text messages. Not anymore. When you live with someone long enough, you stop needing proof. You recognize patterns. The first time I knew something was wrong, it wasn't dramatic. It was a code. Ben came home late from a client dinner downtown. Snow melting in his hair. That navy wool coat draped over his arm. When I hung it up, I smelled perfume. Not strong. Not obvious. Just wrong.
Sweet. Powdery.
Deliberate. I told myself I was imagining it. Then there were the dinners. The conferences. The networking mixers. And a name that surfaced too often in passing. Tara thinks the projection needs adjusting. Tara handled that account. Tara's brother might help with the Wisconsin filing. Always casual. Always professional. Too casual. I confronted him once, back then.
He didn't yell.
He didn't panic. He laughed. Claire, she's a consultant. You're reading into things. And I hated that I almost believed him. That was the last time I confronted him without leverage. Now, I don't guess. I observe. 2 nights after he slid the separation papers across the table, I was folding laundry in our bedroom. Ben was in his office.
Door closed.
Voice low. I wasn't trying to listen. But then I heard it.
A softness.
A tone he doesn't use here. A quiet laugh. Then, yeah, I miss you too. Silence. Then something that froze me. Don't call me that, he said, smiling in his voice. That's your name for me. Your name for me. I stood perfectly still. Sophie's sweater clenched in my hands. He never uses pet names at home. Not anymore. No, babe. No, Claire Bear. The ridiculous thing he used to say in our 20s. Here, he's efficient. There, he's warm. I didn't need to hear her voice. I didn't need confirmation. The affair wasn't a guess. It was layered into his tone, into his posture, into the way he straightened his shirt before stepping back into the hallway, as if someone invisible was still watching him. He opened the office door and almost ran into me. "Oh," he said, startled. "Did you need something?" I smiled. "Just grabbing a hanger." He studied my face for a second, looking for cracks. There were none. "Long call?" I asked lightly. "Investor stuff." "Of course. Always investors." He walked past me and kissed the top of my head. A reflex. A performance. I let him. Later that night, as he slept beside me, phone charging face down on the nightstand, I stared at the ceiling. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel heartbreak. What I felt was clarity. This wasn't impulsive cheating. This wasn't a midlife mistake. This was comfort. Routine. Intimacy somewhere else. And if there was intimacy, there was planning. Men like Ben don't leave until they've built the next structure. Which meant Tara wasn't just an affair. She was part of an exit. I turned on my side and watched him breathe. So calm. So sure of himself. He thought serving me papers first made him in control. He thought confessing nothing kept him powerful. He thought I was reacting. What he didn't realize was that I had stopped reacting a long time ago. The affair wasn't the shock. The shock was how predictable he had become. And predictable men are the easiest to outmaneuver. I closed my eyes. Not to sleep, but to think. Because if Tara was still in the picture, then his timeline was shorter than he believed. And I needed to move faster. Quietly.
Carefully.
Before he realized I wasn't guessing anymore. I knew.
I don't keep a diary.
Diaries are emotional. What I keep is a tracker. It's a simple spreadsheet stored under a boring name. Meal planning Q1. If Ben ever opened it, he'd close it in 3 seconds. Inside, there are columns.
Dates. Amounts. Notes. Deadlines.
Not feelings. The night after I heard him on the phone, I added a new row. December 28th, call tone shift confirmed. Pet name used. Under that, another tab. Goals. Finish bookkeeping certificate. Secure tax season internship. Move emergency fund. Confirm Wisconsin registration details. Meet Megan. Megan Walsh had been my friend long before she became an attorney. We met in college over a shared hatred of group projects. She went to law school. I got married. Life split there. We still texted occasionally. Holiday cards. Birthday messages. 3 months ago, I called her for coffee. I told Ben it was a mom break. It was strategy. Megan didn't flinch when I described the ownership shift to a consulting company in Wisconsin. "Send me the filings," she said calmly. I already had them. Ben had left the documents open one night on his office printer. Careless. Overconfident. The consulting company was registered under Tara's brother's name.
Neat.
Convenient. Transparent if you knew where to look. It's asset repositioning, Megan said. Pre-divorce shielding. Is it legal? Gray, she replied. But gray can be exposed. That was enough. Meanwhile, my days still looked ordinary. School drop-offs. Grocery runs. Hockey practice. But after the kids went to bed, I studied. Balance sheets. Tax codes. Payroll systems. I enrolled in a remote bookkeeping certificate program last spring. Told Ben I wanted something flexible. He liked that word. Flexible meant small. Unthreatening. He didn't notice when I passed the final assessment. He didn't notice when I applied for a paid tax season internship with a regional accounting firm in Minneapolis. He definitely didn't notice when they called me back. The internship starts the week after New Year's. Perfect timing. By then, his clean exit narrative will already be circulating. He thinks I'm dependent. He thinks offering me the townhouse is generous. He thinks I don't understand the value of what he quietly moved. He forgets I handled our household budget for 10 years. He forgets I built spreadsheets before he built presentations. Last week, I opened a separate account at a small credit union in St. Paul. $500 at first. Then another $300. Small transfers. Rounded grocery totals. Cashback rewards redirected. Nothing dramatic. Just insulation. The quiet countdown isn't about revenge. It's about positioning. Every time Ben laughs into that phone, every time he closes his office door, every time he talks about custody logistics, he assumes I'm bracing for impact. I'm not. I'm building leverage. Tonight, he mentioned January travel again. Investor pitch in mid-January, he said, loosening his tie. Big one. I made a mental note.
Mid-January.
Public exposure during funding negotiations would be inconvenient. He doesn't see the connections. He doesn't see the timing aligning. The internship. The financial review. The legal consultation. The holiday truce he insisted on. He thinks the countdown is to our separation. It's not. It's to his overconfidence peaking. I added one more row to my tracker before bed. January 14th, investor pitch. I stared at the date for a long moment. Snow is still piled along the sidewalks outside.
Cold.
Heavy. Deceptively quiet. Storms don't announce themselves when they're building. They gather pressure. Layer by layer.
So, do I.
Upstairs, Ethan murmured in his sleep. Sophie kicked her blanket off again. Ben scrolled on his phone beside me, smiling faintly at something that wasn't me. He thinks I'm behind. He thinks I'm reacting. What he doesn't understand is that I've been counting down for years. And the clock is almost where I need it to be. Ben brought the revised agreement to the kitchen table 3 days later. Cleaner formatting. More confident language. He had added bullet points. He always adds bullet points when he wants something to feel organized and generous. I adjusted the payout upward, he said, sliding it toward me again. I want this to feel fair.
Fair.
Like we were negotiating patio furniture. I read it slowly this time. Not because I needed to understand it, I already did, but because I wanted him watching me. The townhouse transferred fully to me. A lump sum payout labeled as good faith transitional support. Temporary joint custody, with primary residence reassigned within 90 days. That line almost made me smile. Reassigned. Like the kids were office desks. This is more than reasonable, he added gently. Most men wouldn't offer this. There it was again. The benevolent provider. The man sacrificing for peace. I placed the pages flat against the table. I have one condition, I said. He stiffened slightly. What? We act normal until the holidays end. No telling the kids. No telling your parents. No legal filings until after New Year's. He blinked. That's what I was planning anyway. I know, I said calmly. But I need your word.
He studied me.
Probably expecting emotion under the surface. There wasn't any. Finally, he nodded. Of course. We'll keep it clean.
Clean.
He extended his hand like we were closing a deal. I shook it. Then I signed. Again. His shoulders visibly relaxed. The tension in his jaw disappeared. He believed this was over. He believed I had accepted my role in his carefully structured exit. "You're handling this better than I expected," he admitted. "I don't want drama," I replied. That part was true. Drama is loud. Strategy is quiet. That night, he ordered takeout from our favorite Thai place. Celebratory, without calling it that. He even poured me a glass of wine. We sat on the couch while the kids watched a holiday movie. He put his arm around me. Performed normal. Practiced affection. If someone had taken a photo, we would have looked stable. Happy even. Later, after everyone was asleep, I opened my laptop. I didn't cry. I didn't hesitate. I opened my tracker and added one line. December 30th, agreement signed. Condition accepted. Under it I typed 2 words. He bit. Because that's what this was.
Bait.
He thought offering the townhouse made him generous. He thought the payout made him powerful. He thought the custody shift was inevitable. He didn't question why I didn't negotiate harder. Didn't ask why I didn't call a lawyer immediately. Didn't wonder why I seemed almost relieved. Overconfidence is louder than suspicion. And Ben has always been loud in his confidence. The next morning, he left early again. I waited until his car disappeared down the snow-lined street before calling Megan. "It's signed," I told her. She was quiet for a moment. "Good," she said finally. "Now we move." "After New Year's," I replied. "Of course. Timing is everything. Especially when someone believes they've already won." Ben texted me around noon. "Thank you for being mature about this."
I stared at the message. Mature.
He meant compliant. He meant manageable. He meant easy. I typed back. "We both deserve peace." Another lie. Peace isn't what I'm building. I'm building leverage. And the beautiful part? He's helping me do it. By the time the holidays end, he will have relaxed completely. He'll talk more freely. Move money more openly. Lean harder into his future with Tara. He thinks signing those papers secured his exit. What it actually did was lock him into mine. New Year's Eve at Ben's parents' house is always loud. Too much food. Too many opinions. Too much wine poured before noon. This year, the snow had softened into slush, and the streets of Plymouth were lined with melting gray piles that looked tired, like everything else. Ben drove. One hand on the wheel, the other checking his phone at every red light. "You good?" he asked casually, not looking at me. "Of course," I said. Holiday theater. I'd agreed to it. Inside, his mother wrapped me in a hug that smelled like expensive perfume and rosemary. "Claire, you look thin. Are you eating?" "I'm fine, Linda." Ben's father clapped him on the back immediately, steering him toward the den to talk business. The kids ran toward their cousins. Noise filled the house. Laughter. Football commentary. Champagne corks popping too early. Ben slid into his role effortlessly. Attentive father. Polite husband. Successful son. He refilled my glass without being asked. Rested his hand lightly on my back while talking to relatives. Anyone watching would think we were solid. That was the performance. Halfway through dinner, Ben stood. Tapped his glass. "Before midnight," he said smoothly, "I just wanted to say I'm grateful for this family." His mother beamed. His father nodded proudly. Ben reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. He handed it to me in front of everyone. "A little something extra this year," he said. "For everything you do." Applause. Smiles. Approval. I opened it.
A check.
Larger than usual. Generous enough to look meaningful. Small enough to be strategic. I smiled. "Thank you," I said. And I meant it. Because guilt gifts are admissions without confession. I folded the check carefully and slipped it into my purse. Then I noticed something. Linda lifted her wine glass, and the sleeve of her sweater shifted just enough. A bracelet. Not subtle. Not modest. Gold.
Designer. New.
"I love your bracelet," I said casually. She lit up.
Oh.
Ben surprised me. Just because. Just because. I looked at Ben. He shrugged modestly. She deserves it. His father added, he's been generous this year. Took care of a few things for us. Of course he had. Generous son. Generous provider. Generous future ex-husband. And suddenly, everything clicked into place. If he was spending freely on his mother, if he was handing me public checks, if he was playing benefactor across the board, then his quiet asset transfers weren't about financial strain. They were about narrative control. He wanted everyone believing he was transparent, stable,
Fair.
which meant the clean exit payout he offered me was a performance too. I excused myself to the bathroom and locked the door.
Not to cry.
To think. If he was distributing money visibly, it meant he wanted witnesses to his generosity. A paper trail of character. Which also meant he was confident no one was looking at the other trail. The quiet one. The Wisconsin filings. The consulting company. The ownership shift. I checked my phone. One notification from Megan. Filed confirmation received. I smiled at my reflection. When I returned to the dining room, Ben was laughing loudly at something his father said. So relaxed. So unaware. Midnight came. We kissed lightly when everyone shouted. Surface affection. Nothing more. On the drive home, the kids asleep in the back seat, Ben squeezed my hand. Thanks for tonight, he said softly. I know this isn't easy. It's fine, I replied. And I meant that too. Because he thinks this is about emotions. About heartbreak. About closure. It's not. It's about exposure. When we pulled into the driveway, the townhouse lights glowing warmly against the cold Minnesota night, I felt something unexpected. Not sadness. Not anger.
Control.
Upstairs, I tucked Sophie into bed and brushed Ethan's hair off his forehead. Then I went downstairs. Opened my tracker. Added a line. December 31st. Public generosity display. Bracelet confirmed. Narrative building phase active. Under it I typed one sentence. He's spending loudly. Which means he thinks the quiet spending is invisible. And invisible things are the easiest to bring into the light. I took the kids to my parents' house in St. Paul on January 2nd. The snow had hardened into uneven ice along their driveway. My dad had salted it too heavily, like he does everything aggressively, protectively. Mom opened the door before I knocked. You look tired, she said immediately. I am, I replied. That was safe. Inside, the house smelled like coffee and old wood polish. Familiar.
Steady.
Nothing staged. Ethan and Sophie ran toward the living room where the same worn couch had been for 20 years. My childhood still lived in that room. Framed school pictures. Crocheted blankets. Predictable comfort. Dad came in from the garage, wiping his hands on a rag. What's going on? He asked, because fathers always know when something is off. I didn't ease into it. Ben wants a divorce. Silence. Not dramatic.
Heavy.
Mom sat down slowly. Dad's jaw tightened. What did he do? He asked. There it was. He didn't ask what happened. He asked what Ben did. There's someone else, I said evenly. Mom inhaled sharply. Dad turned toward the window, like he needed something to absorb the anger before it reached me. For how long? He asked. I don't know exactly. That was the edited version. I didn't mention the Wisconsin registration.
Didn't mention the asset shift.
Didn't mention Tara's brother's name on corporate filings. Didn't mention that Ben planned to take the kids as part of a narrative strategy. Those pieces weren't for them. Not yet. Mom reached for my hand. Oh, honey, I'm okay, I said firmly. And I was. Dad grabbed his coat. I'm going over there.
No.
My voice cut through the room sharper than I expected.
He stopped.
You're not confronting him, I said calmly. Not now. He thinks he can just. I know what he thinks. Dad looked at me carefully then. Not at a daughter who'd been hurt. At a woman who wasn't panicking. What aren't you telling us? He asked quietly. I held his gaze. I'm not trapped. That was the truth. Mom frowned. What does that mean? It means I'm handling it. Dad's anger shifted slightly. Confusion replacing pure fury. You shouldn't have to handle it alone. I'm not alone, I said. But I need timing. That word hung in the air. Timing. Dad slowly removed his coat. Does he know you know? He asked.
No. Good.
That surprised me. Dad isn't reckless. He's protective. And he understood strategy more than I gave him credit for. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one I did homework at in high school, and I told them just enough. Ben offered a payout. Ben wants primary custody. Ben thinks it'll be clean. Mom's eyes filled. Dad's jaw clenched again. He won't take those kids from you, Dad said flatly. I know, I replied. Because that part wasn't fear. It was leverage. Ethan ran in holding a cookie. Grandpa, can we build the train set? Dad forced a smile instantly. Of course. He walked away with him, steady again. Mom squeezed my hand. You don't have to be strong every second, she whispered. I'm not being strong, I said. I'm being prepared. She searched my face. You still love him? The question didn't sting. It clarified. I loved who he was, I said carefully. Not who he's chosen to be. Upstairs, Sophie's laugh echoed down the hallway. Life continuing. That's the strange thing about betrayal. It tries to make you feel cornered. Small. Powerless. But I wasn't any of those things. Ben believed he was orchestrating an exit. What he didn't realize was that I had already mapped the room. I hugged my parents before we left. Dad held me a second longer than usual. If you need me, he said quietly. I know. Driving back toward Minneapolis, the sky pale and frozen above us, I felt something settle inside me. Not sadness. Not fear. Position. Ben thinks I'm alone in this. He thinks I'm reacting emotionally. He thinks serving papers first gave him the upper hand. He doesn't know that I've already chosen when this ends. And it won't be with him controlling the story. It'll be with him realizing he never did. Megan didn't sound surprised when I forwarded the Wisconsin documents. She sounded interested. That's not standard restructuring, she said. That's concealment. We met in her office 3 days later. Brick building. 3rd floor. Quiet hallway that smelled like old carpet and ambition. I handed her a folder. Printed filings. Transfer dates. LLC registration forms. The consulting company had a clean name. Neutral. Forgettable. Registered in Wisconsin. Signer. Daniel Klein. Tara's brother. Megan leaned back in her chair. When did he move the shares? 6 months ago, I replied. Before he mentioned divorce? Yes. She nodded slowly. Then this isn't about romance. I already knew that. This is about valuation, she continued. If he reduces his visible ownership before filing, the marital asset pool looks smaller. He offers you a generous payout based on the reduced number and keeps the real value hidden. Exactly. The room felt very still. Affairs are emotional. This was structural. He's pitching investors mid-January, I said. If the ownership structure is questioned. It complicates funding, Megan finished. Investors hate opacity. Opacity. I almost laughed. Ben had spent months calling me emotional. Meanwhile, he was quietly rearranging millions. Megan flipped to another page. There's more, she said. She pulled up a public record I hadn't seen yet. A lease. Short-term corporate housing in downtown Minneapolis. Signed under the consulting company. Start date, February 1st. I stared at it. Secret apartment? I asked quietly. Looks like it. Not just hotel charges. Not just late nights. A location. A planned relocation. Built before he handed me papers. He wasn't leaving spontaneously. He was transitioning. This is premeditated, Megan said calmly. He's building a parallel life while presenting you with a controlled exit. A parallel life. The phrase landed heavier than I expected. Not because of heartbreak. Because of audacity. He offered to take the kids, I said. He thinks stability equals him. Megan's eyes sharpened. If he argues you're financially dependent while he appears structured and generous, he strengthens that position. But if the court sees hidden asset transfers? Then his credibility collapses. There it was. Not revenge. Credibility. Men like Ben survive on credibility. Investors trust it. Parents admire it. Judges rely on it. Expose the manipulation and the structure cracks. Do we confront him? I asked. Not yet, Megan replied immediately. We document. We verify valuation before transfer. We trace cash flow between his firm and this LLC.
She paused.
You did well signing. I didn't smile. I needed him relaxed. He is, she said. He's accelerating. That apartment lease proves it. Driving home, I replayed the timeline. 6 months ago, ownership shift. 3 months ago, consulting company active. 2 weeks ago, separation papers. February, secret apartment. Investor pitch, mid-January. He wasn't just cheating. He was extracting. He wanted me grateful for scraps while he repositioned the real value out of reach. When I walked into the townhouse, Ben was in the kitchen, unusually cheerful. Good news, he said. The pitch deck's almost finalized. I'm sure it's impressive, I replied. It is, he said confidently. Everything's aligned. Aligned. He kissed Sophie on the head as she colored. Asked Ethan about hockey. Performed presence. I watched him carefully. No hesitation. No suspicion. He truly believed I had accepted the narrative. Later that night, as he slept, I looked at him differently. Not as a husband, not even as a liar, but as a man who believed intelligence was his advantage alone. He forgot something important. I had watched him build his firm from the beginning. I knew his patterns, his risk tolerance, his blind spots. And his biggest blind spot was this. He thinks cheating is the crime. It's not. The real secret isn't Tara. It's the asset strip. It's the secret apartment. It's the plan to make me look generously provided for while quietly shrinking the truth. He believes he's ahead. What he doesn't realize is that once credibility cracks, everything attached to it trembles. And I don't need to scream. I just need the right room, and the right moment, and the right audience. Ben chose the restaurant carefully. Steakhouse. Downtown Minneapolis. Dim lighting. Heavy wooden tables. The kind of place where important conversations happen over expensive wine. One last nice family night, he'd called it. He made the reservation for 6:30. Early enough for the kids. Late enough to feel serious. I arrived 5 minutes before him with Ethan and Sophie. I wore a charcoal blazer I hadn't touched in years. Structured. Sharp. Not soft. The hostess led us to a booth near the back. Ben walked in 2 minutes later, smiling like a man in control of his narrative. You look nice, he said, slightly surprised. Thank you. He ordered appetizers immediately. Extra attentive to the kids. Extra patient. Performance mode. Halfway through the main course, he cleared his throat. Guys, he began gently, looking at Ethan and Sophie. Mom and I want to talk to you about something. I set my napkin down. Actually, I said calmly, before you do that, there's something we need to clarify. Ben blinked. What? I reached into my bag and pulled out a slim folder. Not thick. Not dramatic. Precise. I placed it on the table between us. What's this? He asked, voice tightening slightly. Documentation. He forced a smile. Claire, this isn't the time. It's exactly the time. Ethan and Sophie were focused on their fries. Too young to track adult tension in detail. I kept my voice steady. You offered a generous settlement. I continued evenly. Based on a reduced valuation of your firm. Ben's posture changed. Reduced?
Yes.
The valuation after you transferred partial ownership to the Wisconsin consulting company. Color drained from his face. I don't know what you're talking about. I slid the first page toward him. LLC registration. Daniel Klein's name highlighted. He didn't touch it. You moved shares 6 months ago, I said quietly, before serving me papers. That's restructuring, he snapped softly. Standard. I slid the second document. The lease.
Corporate housing.
February 1st start date. For restructuring? I asked.
His jaw tightened.
You went through my files? You left them open. His breathing shifted.
Faster.
This is ridiculous, he muttered. You signed the agreement. I did. I pulled out one more document. My agreement. Revised.
Prepared.
Structured. Full custody assigned to me. Hidden ownership reintegrated into marital asset valuation. Support terms tied to verified revenue. Not manipulated filings. He stared at it. What is this? This is reality. His voice lowered dangerously. You don't understand how this works. I understand exactly how it works. I leaned forward slightly. You planned an investor pitch mid-January. If questions about concealed ownership surface during due diligence, funding collapses. His eyes flicked up sharply. How do you? I've been paying attention. The silence at the table grew thick. He glanced at the kids, then back at me. You wouldn't. I don't want to, I replied calmly. But if this goes to court, disclosure becomes public record. He swallowed. You're threatening me? No, I said. I'm protecting our children. That word hit him harder than anything else.
Children.
Full custody, I continued evenly. Structured visitation. Transparent financial reporting. Hidden shares restored to valuation. We filed cleanly, quietly. And if I don't sign? I held his gaze. Then your investors learn about opacity before your pitch. And your parents learn why the generous payout wasn't generous at all. His hand trembled slightly against the table. The confident provider was gone. In his place, a man calculating risk. You set me up, he whispered. No, I said calmly. You underestimated me. He looked around the restaurant like the walls were closing in. This will ruin everything. No, I corrected softly. Exposure will. He stared at the papers for a long time. The waiter approached once. I waved him away politely. Finally, Ben picked up the pen. His signature wasn't steady.
He signed. Slowly.
Deliberately. Defeated. I collected the papers without triumph. Without a smile. Ethan looked up. Are we still getting dessert? I smiled at him. Of course. Ben leaned back in the booth, pale. You never loved me, he muttered quietly. I looked at him steadily. I loved you, I said. Until you turned love into leverage. He had no response to that. Dessert arrived. The kids laughed. The restaurant continued humming. And across from me sat a man who had believed he controlled the ending. Until he realized he never did. Ben signed because he had no clean alternative. Court would expose the ownership shift. Discovery would uncover the consulting shell. Investor due diligence would implode his pitch. So he signed. Quietly. No shouting. No smash glasses. Just a pen scraping against expensive restaurant paper while the kids argued about chocolate versus vanilla. 2 weeks later, the paperwork was filed exactly as outlined. Full custody assigned to me. Structured weekly visitation. Financial terms tied to verified income audited. Hidden ownership reintegrated into the marital pool before division.
Clean.
Documented. Final. Ben didn't tell his parents the full story. He couldn't. The generous provider narrative didn't survive transparency. We moved in early February. Not far. A bright rental 10 minutes from the kids' school. Big windows. White walls. Nothing dramatic. Just light. Ethan chose the bedroom facing the small park. Sophie insisted on string lights over her bed. The first night there, after the boxes were stacked and the beds were assembled, the house felt quiet in a different way. Not empty. Uncomplicated. Ben picked the kids up the following Saturday for his first scheduled visit. He arrived exactly on time. Polite. Controlled. He avoided looking at me directly. Call if they need anything, he said. I always do. When he drove away with them, I didn't feel fear. I felt structure. My tax season internship started that Monday. First day. Laptop issued. Client files assigned. I wasn't the overwhelmed wife anymore. I was Claire Harper, bookkeeping certificate completed, internship secured, experience building. A competence feels different when it's yours alone. 3 weeks in, I launched something small.
A blog.
Nothing dramatic. Just a simple site titled 35 and Rebuilding. No bitterness. No public accusations. Just honest posts about finances after divorce. about custody schedules, about rebuilding credit, about practical survival without panic. The first post was shared by a local parenting group, then a financial forum, then a regional news blog picked it up. Traffic grew, then emails, women asking for help reviewing budgets, freelance bookkeeping requests, small consulting gigs. By March, I had 3 steady freelance clients alongside the internship. Ben called one evening after dropping the kids off. His voice sounded different, less polished.
I saw your blog, he said.
I assumed you would. It's getting attention. Yes. Silence. Did you ever love me? He asked finally. There it was. Not anger. Not accusation. Confusion. I didn't hesitate. I did, I said calmly. Until you turned love into a cage. He exhaled slowly. I didn't mean to hurt you. That wasn't the point, I replied. You meant to control the exit. Silence again. I thought you'd fall apart, he admitted. I know. That honesty cost him something. I underestimated you. Yes, I said. No cruelty. Just truth. After we hung up, I blocked his number. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. Communication would stay in the parenting app where it belonged.
Structured.
Documented. Bounded. The kids adjusted faster than adults ever do. Routines stabilized them.
School.
Homework. Hockey practice. String lights glowing in Sophie's new room. Ethan building Lego cities on a different living room floor. One evening, while they were asleep, I stood by the window of the rental and looked out at the quiet street. No snowstorm. No dramatic collapse. Just calm. Ben didn't lose everything. He still has his firm. His reputation. Carefully repaired. His parallel life. Now public, but contained. I didn't destroy him. He dismantled himself when he believed I was too small to notice. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't expose him to ruin him. I exposed the structure to protect my children. And then I rebuilt mine. 35. Not broken. Not bitter. Just clear. He thought handing me breakup papers in a snowstorm was the end of my story. It wasn't. It was the moment I stopped waiting for permission and started writing my own.